We'd like to welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Nicholas County Board of Education on Monday, August 1st, 2022. If you would, please stand and join the board for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing this evening, we need to approve the minutes of the meetings held on June 23rd, 2022, and July 14th and July 18th, 2022.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes.
Dr. Penix makes a motion to approve the minutes from those dates on June 23rd, July 14th, and July 18th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Berry seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda, discussion items. Update on Panther Creek Elementary walking track.
Like Mr. Stunt to come up. So you come on up. So he can give more detailed information. When Panther Creek Elementary approached this board, they asked for permission to place a track at the facility because they had fundraised, they had grants or what have you to place the track at the facility. And the board did vote to allow them to place the track there. Since then, there's been complications. The area is saturated with water. There's drainage issues. There's lots of things going on. So I contacted the principal, and because ultimately it's the principal's project, and then of course our director can provide support to the project. And I asked him how he would like to resolve the issue with the track at Panther Creek. And I told him that he really had a couple of options. He could check for, he could check to see if he could get some additional volunteers to help, or he has funding from our levy that's for his school. Out of the $25,000 that he has a fence project that's going to go around the playground. It's going to be about $6,000. He would have the balance in funds to do whatever corrective measures are necessary for the track. And he said that that would work, that would be fine. And so anyway, he was able to talk to someone who was willing to volunteer to go out and do some, and I'll let Alan give you the details of the things that need to happen. And then we'll use the remaining balance, or not, to do whatever needs to be done to get the track suitable. I know that there was a load of gravel around the track, and then another load that's needed to get equipment in to do the drainage and things like that. But I'll let Alan give you more details because he knows more than I do.
Thank you. So coming into this, you know, at the last board meeting when this came up, I didn't really have a lot of background information on it. At that time, we had just reached out to the vendor to say, hey, please come in and get this paved and finish the job up. And so there were some questions about we need to get the check approved, and so that's kind of where I've come into the picture at this point. So we went out there, and I think there have been several people that have gone out and looked at it since then. I've gone out and met with Mr. Asbury, and we've kind of put together a plan on this is where we're at. and how do we move forward? I think the biggest concern right now is the completion of it. It's sat there for quite some time. We did have volunteers and people that worked hard to raise money. And so we want to make sure that it's completed, because quite frankly, I think we could all agree it's an eyesore right now, and it's doing no one good in the condition it's in. We've got to get it finished. So part of the issue we face right now is there are still some drainage issues. Since the last board meeting, unfortunately, it's rained almost every day, and so that hasn't helped us get in there any quicker. But as of right now, well, the plan is one section that's holding the most water. We wanted to bring a little bit more gravel in, so we ordered a truckload of gravel that we're going to, as soon as we can get in, hopefully Wednesday, we're going to get in and spread a little bit more gravel out in that area to help with the drainage. Our maintenance team is planning one right now to go in on Wednesday to help build those ditches up a little bit more, or build them down a little bit more, so that we can get the water off of it, so that our paving vendor can get in and finish the job. I spoke with our vendor this morning, if we can get that gravel down, and we ordered a second load of gravel to help build a small road to the track, so that that's more accessible and so that the equipment can get in there and not sink, because it's really soft right now. So on Wednesday, we plan on working to, if it's dry enough, we plan on trying to get that gravel down, get the road in with the drain there, so that the paver can come in, he says next week, to pave next week. And so once we get the pavement down, then Josh has the same volunteers that originally did the original excavation. They'll come back in afterwards, and they plan on doing all the drain work and all the excavation to dress it up and make it look nice. So that's where we're at now. If you all have any questions, I'd do my best to answer it.
Was the drainage not included in his contract?
No, it was not. The contractors called, said the excavation would be done prior. And so...
I think most of the excavation was volunteer.
Yeah.
It wasn't a contract.
That's part of the problem. The contractor did not, that wasn't in his bid.
Part of that contract was that the area for the track would need to be free of standing water and have proper drainage in there before any paving would take place. And I will say that there has been quite a bit of finger pointing throughout this as we've talked to different people. We've had different parties involved. And so really what we've tried to do is we've just tried to say, this is kind of where we're at right now. How do we move forward and move this to completion? Because how we got here is, there's a lot of blame going around, and so.
And I think that with the principal, he is very willing to step up and supervise it. Rocky was a pretty hands-on kind of guy, and and Alan is also. But when it comes to school projects and monitoring of that, in my discussion with the principal, he understands that he's going to be actually more involved with this process and in talking with Mr. Stump. So what we'll do is we'll give updates. Oftentimes we do have schools come in and say, we're raising money, we have a project, we would just like to have permission. We're not asking for board funds. And you'll find that the board typically approves those types of things. But when it gets into partial volunteer work and a contractor doesn't do it from start to finish, you run into problems like that because, like I said, there's drainage issues, the volunteer work was very nice and nicely done, but again, there's just a lot involved, and I believe that we're on a course that we can get this completed now. There's funds in the school budget to support that, and we can update you, keep you updated.
My question is, what process do we have in place so that this doesn't happen again as far as paying somebody to do a job before? I understand if you're building a house, you know, once you get to a certain point, the bank comes in or whoever and they say, okay, we're gonna make this installment. But in a job like this, it wasn't that big of a job, you know, $20-some thousand.
Well, it comes down to this. So the board was presented with, if someone comes in and asks the board to allow them to put something on school property, it's kind of hard as a board member to say, well, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. So one of the bids came in at $60,000. This other bid came in at $20,000. Again, what do you say? Because if you just, when you will have people come to you and ask you, and then that's something that you'll have to, as a board, say, you know, no, you're gonna have to go ahead and raise that $60,000 and do it from start to finish with the contractor, or you can say, okay, use your free labor and do it the way they did it. That's just something that you have to decide as an individual board as it comes to you, because every situation is different. Just like Summersville Elementary School, they wanted to put in some benches and some workout stations and stuff. There's always little things that people want to do, and it's a case-by-case basis, and sometimes it's kind of hard to say no when Panther Creek worked so hard and they felt confident that they could carry this out, and as a board it's kind of hard. I can see it would be hard to say, no, we're not going to let you do that.
Well, my point is, we wrote a check last fall for $15,000-some, and at the last board meeting, it was reported that the base coat was down, and that base coat was not down, because I walked it.
What I can tell you is that in talking to Mr. Roberts about that, again, this is a situation that I believe will be corrected in the future. The principal, he was not in favor of releasing that money. That was not ever communicated to our treasurer, ever, that he was not comfortable in releasing that. So the person that we were working through was our maintenance director. So I'm not sure how that happened, but I can tell you, I've empowered all of the principals in this county to lead their schools. That means their school projects, that means instruction, and in this situation, when I have my principals meeting this week, I will again talk about empowering them to lead. In the future, since the principal said he would never have agreed to release that additional money, we had two different people, we had someone else communicating other than the principal. That's where it come in, and miscommunication happens. So in the future, and in talking to Mr. Stump, I will not recommend invoices be paid unless that principal says, yes, I'm good to this. This is because ultimately it's on the principal's back to have it done. So it's not really fair to say, well, principal, this is messed up, but yet the principal was kind of removed from the equation of saying, don't make the payment. So this is one of those lessons learned, and we're working, and I met with Kevin today, and we discussed it as well, and
Well,
in the future, that's
I wasn't
how.
blaming you, Kevin, I just.
No. But, I mean, we've had these discussions because it really, you know, I think that that's the way we fix it, is we move forward, and the principals have the final say in conjunction with the maintenance director.
Especially with school projects.
Yes.
Yeah, I think another thing to remember is, in general, when we take bids, we tend to want to take the cheapest bid, but that's not always the best thing to do, because they'll cut short on material if it's way different than what other bid you might have.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that that's, you know, what happened. It
Well,
was just a difference in.
probably, yeah,
Yeah.
one contract didn't have the grading or groundwork, and the other one.
Well,
did.
it all had the same thing, it was all bid out, just like, we have one project that came in that they wanted like $1.5 million, and another person bid it in at $1 million, and then the person who won the project was like at $200,000. Sometimes there's that much of a difference in projects, I don't know why, and unless it's someone, and, you know, Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's, unless it's someone that we have marked off that they owe us money, we have to accept them. We have no reason not to accept vendors unless we have a cause, yeah,
So you have to have justification to
yes.
not take the lowest bid. Gotcha.
Well, I'd like to ask, to follow up on what Mr. Prine is saying there. Who drew up the specs for this? Because what we've heard, or I've heard a lot since that time, is there's just nothing but a lot of water around that school, or a lot of wet spots in there. And, I mean, somebody had to look at that or know that when they were drawing up the specs for this track to go in. And that would be my first question: who drew up the specs? Because they've certainly missed something on the drainage for that area there. That'd be the first thing. And any time we have anything additional that's going to go into our schools, I certainly don't want something that's going to be an eyesore, like we were kind of thinking this might be last board meeting. We want quality work, so I would say that, and I think the superintendent's addressed that will go through the supervisor of the maintenance there and make sure that everything's in order. That, I mean, this may have needed somebody come in from an architectural firm to look at it and tell us about the flow of the drainage and all that type of thing. But I think we missed something there in this process, and we need to be a little bit more careful about it.
So from here on out, it'll be between you and Josh and Kevin to decide if it's. Any other questions?
We're holding that check, right?
Yes.
It was in the, I got that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sun.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 5, action items. Action item A is approval of understanding with West Virginia Eye Institute. Ms. Young.
In the past, we have contracted with .13 for orientation and mobility services for our visually impaired students, and they no longer want to travel here. So this is some ladies from Fayette County. And to be paid through federal grant.
Federal money.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're affiliated with WVU.
Correct.
Okay.
And our current visually impaired teacher is working on this certification, so hopefully in 2 years, she'll be able to provide this for us.
And we won't have to contract it.
Right. That's the goal. And it is cheaper than what we were paying.
Look good to you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any discussion? 5B, approval of the contract with Thinking Maps Incorporated for right from the beginning training. And that's for, I guess, Mount Lookout.
This will provide them 2 days of face-to-face training for the next step of the right from the beginning training that this staff has agreed that they would like to implement this year to improve their writing scores. They're planning to do it on November 9th and 10th, which if you've looked at the calendar, that's a chopped up crazy week. And Mrs. Duffield has sat down and come up with a wonderful schedule so that if she has 2 substitutes to rotate, basically there will be no loss of instructional time for the students because of the way they're going to regroup for those 2 days. They're going to be having read aloud or comprehension activity with 3 1-hour rotations. I have great detailed plan if you'd like to see it. It's coming out of their title funds.
Is that a new program in the county, this is? Or did we have one trying that, working with that last year?
The writing part will be new. We've had schools before that have done the thinking maps component, which is kind of the pre-step and the organizing and getting their thoughts. This is further training in how to take that information off of those maps and those graphic organizers to get it to the actual writing process. Mrs. Duffield has used this before when she was in North Carolina and saw great success with it.
Any other questions? Action item C, approval of contract with, I'm not sure how you say that.
Sydney.
Oh, Sydney?
That last one's dated 7/26, is that okay? The agreement entered into on 7/26. Is it okay to have that date?
That's probably the date they sent us the contract.
Send us the contract,
Mhm.
okay.
Sydney is a resource that will be provided for our new teachers. As you know, the state requires that you provide them a basic mentoring, which in the past we have done consultatively, where we've put them together in a cohort and we've met with them throughout the year. We'll still have that initial meeting and probably one throughout the year. However, with the lack of substitutes and coverage that we have, I think we need to look at how we're doing things a little differently. So what I would like to do is purchase instructional coaching cycles for our new teachers so that the times that we are not meeting with them, they will have this online resource. And this company is out of Texas, and we have some other counties in the state who have used them over the last year, kind of tried it out. The SIBNE stands for Seeing is Believing in Me, but basically the way it works is they are assigned a coach who is a veteran educator who is nationally board certified, and what will happen is that coach will receive information from the principal as well as that teacher on what they think their strengths and weaknesses are, and then once a week for 6 weeks they'll set up their little iPad when they're delivering a lesson that they've agreed upon through their pre-coaching conference. They'll have that short video, and then they'll have some follow-up with that coach based on the pieces that that teacher is looking to improve. So whether it be pedagogy, whether it be classroom management, they'll have that individualized attention that, of course, we don't have the resources to be able to provide.
Could that also be available to teachers who maybe in their evaluations were shown to need improvement,
Yes,
even though they're not beginners? Right.
correct. And that's why I wanted to, when you purchase them, basically you're purchasing a bucket of those sessions. So I wanted to make sure that we purchased enough that we could cover all of our new teachers and any teachers that may be on improvement or need that piece.
Any other questions, discussion? Moving along, 5D, approval of contract with Mitch Suter's Touring Musical Theater.
You've already approved him to come to Glade Creek earlier in the year, I think in June or July. But when I was looking at liquidating funds, and I know last year what happened was as he started making his rounds to schedule things, most of the Title I schools had called and said, hey, can we go ahead and schedule him? But I was able to look into the Title IV and V budgets as well, and I think we can be able to provide his services to all the elementary schools. You'll notice in the contract, the show that he will be doing will be a little bit different at each of the elementary schools based on whether they've had him previously or not. But this will give all kids the opportunity to have exposure to the arts and not just the title schools. And then, yes, I will cover the cost for Glade Creek if you're wondering about that. That way they're not taking it out of their school funds and everybody else is getting it from the county. I'm gonna do it for everybody.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
I don't see the high school.
No, it's just elementary schools.
Pardon me?
It's on the elementaries.
It's geared.
Only elementary?
Yeah, he's geared to elementary.
Okay, mine. Gotcha.
Thank you. Action item E is the approval of the old policies, sections 5,000 and 6,000. I think we're gonna
Table that to next time?
table that till
Sure,
next time.
Sure,
We didn't, I mean, I know you're on vacation, but
right.
it didn't download.
right,
and
I got you.
I didn't get a chance to look at it. Mr. Phoenix, did you get a chance to look at it?
I did not.
Okay, and so we're gonna table that.
Okay, sure.
Till 15th.
Sure.
Thank you. And then, action item F, approval of modification to the Russell Johnson lease.
Yes, this was a very slight change. You approved the lease the last board meeting. He sent it back with a couple requests for a change that were extremely minor. So we added his wife's name on page 1 there at the top, and also on page 9 for the signature block. And the other change was on page 6, under subletting and assignment. I didn't write this original lease, and the original lease had given us the right to sublet it, and he asked to have that removed because he doesn't want us to sublet it. I don't know why we would need to sublet it. We just use it for the band. So the very, very minor changes.
Any questions or discussion about that? Okay, thank you. Approval of the understanding with SESC for virtual home academy service.
This looks pretty much like what Jason Butcher said when he presented the other night.
I was wondering who the virtual facilitator was going to be, and the district administrator and information technology contact.
Well, I'm the facilitator for the county.
Okay,
And what'd you ask me? Who else?
the district administrator.
Well, you know,
That's Tammy.
It's all you?
well, not everything.
And the
All the
technology.
counselors at the middle schools and high schools are facilitators.
Okay,
And we check grades weekly, try to stay on top of things with kids, because they, sometimes, if they don't have somebody checking up on them, they'll wait until the last.
well, it says at least one, so, okay. And how about the technology? Is that, okay.
Are there grade level requirements for those, or are those pretty much granted to on request and then?
In our virtual policy for the county, we opted only to do virtual school for 6 through 12. We did have it open beforehand to elementary, K through 5, but that's just not good for those kids. I think, Chris, you were here we had a meeting, and it was just, it wasn't this particular company, but it was just inappropriate for third graders. Yeah.
I mean, is there an ACT score required or anything like that? Or is it?
No, but any 11th grader is required to take the SAT and those tests, so.
They get on upon request, and if they're not performing well, then we give them a letter and tell them they have to go back to school.
Yeah, okay, everybody gets in and then,
Yeah.
No, only people with 3.0 get to do this. That's in our virtual policy
Okay,
as well.
that's
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think, what the grades were about, they pretty well matched what we have in county for ABC.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
But we give them the letters to go back if they're not performing.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
That's correct.
So it also mentioned IEPs and the 504s.
Yes, Lydia and Christy are on the emails too, and they send the snapshot, because I really don't have that information. I would have to go to them and get it.
Right.
So I've included them in the listing that I sent to the SESC, so that they can upload the snapshots for IEPs and 504s.
So the school counselor signs them up and then sends it to you and you okay it, and that's.
Last year, I did all of it, and it was really hard. But this year, the counselors have since had training, and so they will set the kids up in Weavis 2.0, and they put the course code in for the kids and send the schedule. And what's going to happen is Ken Lester, who is with Proximity in the SESC, he is going to enroll all of our kids in their classes. It will either come straight from the counselors to Ken, or they'll send it to me and I'll put it in a template, because I have a spreadsheet template that they require, and we'll send it that way. But Ken Lester and Charlie Phillips are going to be here for a parent orientation training for students and parents on the 11th. So hopefully all the questions that parents may have will be answered.
So it says each county or district will set their own virtual attendance policy. What's,
Our attendance policy in our current virtual policy is that if their grades are passing and they stay up to a certain level, then it will be okay. And with this, they will take attendance, so I'll get that information. So if there's anything fishy about it, we'll be on top of it.
so if their attendance is not what it needs to be in their grade slip, then, okay.
And you said they had to have B average to qualify?
3.0 to.
And do they have to maintain that?
Well, some of them have gone down below during the course of the semester or the school year, but they find a way. I'm not a real big fan of middle school age kids in this, because I think a lot of those kids are developmentally not ready to be on their own that way, because you're kind of on your own. But I had a couple sixth graders that did straight A's and did remarkably well. So, you know, it depends a lot on the family life and the kid, but the counselors were really great last year. But I mean, by the end of the year, the counselors were checking weekly and sending out emails and letters. At the beginning of the school year, I was sending out emails weekly, and it was just a lot, but they're great. And I have less students. Right now, I have 25 kids that have signed up for it, and 10 are from Richwood High School, 7 are from Nicholas County High School, 3 from Richwood Middle, and 5 from Summersville Middle.
Any other questions from Ms. Gregory?
I can't remember the cost. I think he told us last time, but.
He did, and it was, I can't remember exactly.
Did he say
It was about
2400?
27 and 2764, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Close to 28.
Okay.
Now, the student pays that, or do we
The
subsidize?
county pays
county?
that.
Okay, the county pays.
But we get that back.
We get the
Count,
funding.
we count them.
We count it, they're our students.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion action item, to approve action items A, B, C, D, F, G.
So moved.
Dr. Penix makes a motion for A, B, C, D, F, G. We're gonna table it. Mr. Green, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, I think we're gonna move the consent items towards the end of the meeting. I'm just kidding. Mr. Hess needs to go.
You can't bypass it.
I'm just kidding.
Quick tricks. Okay. So the first item is payment of current invoices. If you have any questions.
I do have one question.
Okay.
Of course I do, right? Check number 2209121 to the city of Summersville for $4,000. And I'm assuming that's for Old Main, and it's for June.
Yes.
Well, we didn't have any students attending in June. Why are we still paying on that?
It's a year-round rental, 12-month rental.
They use it for practice.
Practice.
Yeah, they use it for practice, and it's a year-round, just like if you rent a house. If you just go on vacation for 2 weeks, they don't knock 2 weeks off of your rent.
Essentially, when we went into that agreement with the city, they did not want it for a partial year. I mean, they wanted to relinquish that to us, let us take care of it, use it as needed, and so that's how we set it up as a 12-month rental.
Okay,
And it should be 100% reimbursed by FEMA.
okay.
It should be what?
100% reimbursed by FEMA,
That's just one-time charge, $4,000
$4,000 a month.
a month?
That does not come out of our allotment to construct schools.
No.
That's a separate FEMA grant.
So as long as the students are in pods, they kind of pay for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Since they lost their gymnasium, we had to replace it with a gym, and that's the only one really available.
Okay.
Any other
Do
questions?
they use it, do they use the auxiliary gym up behind the high school?
Yeah.
They use it too?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on payment of current invoices? We have a couple of supplements and transfers. I'll run through those real quick. First one is for $1,440, and it is a Discover Your Future graphic design grant for the Career Center. The next one is a food service SRM supplement, which is $4,350, and that's budgeted to child nutrition supplies. Next one is a supplement of $44,258, and it is early literacy early literacy grant, transformative. See it.
Transformative.
And that's purchase services, supplies are the two largest areas that are supplementing that. Next one is a supplement for $41,778.18, and that's a Secure Rural Schools Act. And the last one is $2,500, and it's a SREB grant at the, it's basically out of county travel at the Career Center. That's the transfers and supplements. couple contracts. First one is, I'm still working with this group to get the student insurance set up for this year. I did put a copy of last year's agreement. It's at no cost to the board. We offer accidental insurance to all of our students and all of our athletes. And so as soon as I get that in place, we'll be sending that out to the schools to offer to all of our students. Then the next one is, this was a separate attachment, electronic attachments. It's very lengthy.
107 pages. I read it.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
It's very, very lengthy, a lot of legalese in there. In a nutshell, what that is, it's years ago, the IRS mandated that organizations keep track of your employees who are contributing to 403Bs, and which is just a supplemental voluntary retirement that employees have. And there was nothing in place that regulated if anyone was exceeding the annual limit. And so the IRS said, hey, somebody needs to be watching that. And so they put that on the counties or all these groups to monitor that. And you know, we have 500 employees, and you have to make sure that none of those are exceeding their limits with any vendor. So you have to monitor the inputs and the withdrawals, and it's just more than we have personnel to handle. I would be confident and say that every county in the state uses either one of two companies. This company is TSA, and the other one was called Plan with Ease. I went with Plan with Ease when we started this. It's at no cost. Neither one of them are at cost to the board. They offer that service. They offer that service as part of a benefit. I haven't been happy with Plan with Ease. They're difficult to deal with. Employees struggle to get permissions and authorizations, and so I would like to switch to TSA, which over the years they have become the more popular group to use. Again, there's no cost to the board for this service at all, and they'll monitor all of those contributions to the 403Bs. Unfortunately, not very many of our employees take advantage of that, and so if we make it easier for them, hopefully they will consider contributing to an additional voluntary retirement plan. So that's item B. Under bids.
Kevin, before, on item A of that, all of our student athletes are required to have insurance coverage either through this program, under 3A, or their own insurance. Is that correct?
Family insurance, yeah.
But all athletes are required to have.
To my knowledge, yes. Under item A, under bids, Mountain Vending, Somersville Middle School would like to use them for their snack, juice, and water machines. And you can see the commission rate there on the contract, or the bid. Also, Appalachian Office Products, we'd like to ask the board to approve a copier for Ridgewood High School. And I've included that as well. Then finally, we have surplus auction items. And most of that is equipment that will be at our auction on Wednesday at the Career Center at 9 a.m. So this is our last round of asking the board to declare some equipment surplus. And then we will auction that off at on Wednesday.
If they don't get rid of all that, do you do offer a bulk purchase to vendors or some type? Or?
You know, we've been fortunate enough to, it always sells. Occasionally we've had things that Occasionally, I believe, I'm saying, we've had a few things we've had to throw away, maybe just some scrap, just basically junk that was left behind, or someone bought and left because they just wanted part of what we were selling. But for the most part, yes, everything sells.
We used to have trouble with used computers and stuff, things of that nature, that's about all.
Yeah, we recycle those in a different way now. We actually have a company that'll pay us for those, a few pennies per unit. So that will be, again, surplus auction Wednesday, 9 a.m. at the Nicholas County Career Center, if anyone's interested. Item B under finance is some out-of-state travel for Lydia and Lydia Young and to Kentucky. And item 2 is Tommy Bayless, Justin Woods, and Alexis Spell to a conference in Florida.
So I noticed Justin Woods and Alexis Spell are teachers,
Teachers, yes.
and
Go ahead to explain.
yes,
Yeah, they from the.
they're not from the
So
Christian.
Project Lead the Way is a program that's offered at for high school students. There's also Project Lead the Way for middle school students. We received a grant for our middle schools, and Summersville Middle School chose to participate in Project Lead the Way. Policy 2510 now calls for career technical education programs to be in the middle school. We cover that through students going directly to the Career Center, but this is an enhanced way of supporting students with career opportunities. And Title V and grants from the career technical education will actually pay for the expenses, and the Department of Ed actually paid for these programs. And the Department of Ed is recommending that these teachers go to get the supports they need for starting this program.
There's 2 teachers at the middle school.
Yes, Summersville Middle School, and the third is not able to attend, unfortunately, but 2 of them are. Mr. Bayless is the Career Technical Education Director. I know a lot of people just view him as being the person at the Career Center, but he is actually over career technical education for the entire county. That includes making sure that middle school is receiving the career technical education as required by West Virginia Board Policy 2510. He also has to monitor career technical education programs or offerings at the high schools, and so he is actually countywide.
Any other questions or discussion?
Kevin, I want to back up just a minute and ask you a question. We were talking about bids a while ago. And you made the statement that we are obligated to take the lowest bid.
Yes.
I didn't know that was always the case. I thought a time or two we had taken maybe the middle bid.
We can. You can set up a matrix and a series of questions and have each question scored, have a score per question, and then the low score, of course, would get that. And there's I believe the price has to play at least 50% of the total points in that matrix. We use that occasionally, but on normal bids, it's usually the low bid. If we know there is an issue with the low bid, then if you can justify that there is a problem or an issue, or you've had previous history that is negative, then you can justify not using that low bid. So you can reject that.
Well, in the case we were talking about, I understand the great distance between the high and the low there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure if the high was way out of budget. So, I understand there's always difference.
That was the second bid on that round, so the chances of getting another bid, a competitive bid, was pretty unlikely.
So the second was the high then, right?
The second round it was a low bid.
Oh, it was the lower bid.
First bid was, first time we bid it was
Okay.
high. And then we rebid it because there wasn't enough funds to support that.
Right.
And then we got $20,000, $20,000 bid. And that was within budget.
Right.
And that's why we went that route.
Okay.
Any other discussion on consent items?
Do we provide substitutes when these people go on trips?
Yes.
If it's a teacher, yes. Administration. I guess principals could have it sometimes, could have it, so.
Sometimes they, they pre-assign, but, we try to get subs if at all possible.
Yeah, I would like to see us get away from that pre-assigning.
I
as
don't
much
like
as
it,
possible.
I don't like it at all.
But that's another time for another discussion. All right, do we have a motion to accept the consent items?
I make the motion.
Mr. Berry makes a motion.
I'll second.
Dr. Pennick seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That brings us to item 7, personnel. Do we have a need to go into executive session?
Yes.
Mr. President, I move we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel.
Okay. I have a second.
Second.
Mr. Berry seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? And it is 6:53. Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Berry makes a motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Second by Mr. Green. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. At 7:36. There were no decisions made while we were in the executive session. And at this time, we'll go on with
Yes.
personnel.
You have before you the updated personnel agenda. The changes are in red. An updated copy has been made available to the public and also members of the press, but I will read over the changes. On page 1, under professional, Monica Belmont, employing the position of principal for Cherry River Elementary School effective August 1st, 2022. Under service, we removed the literacy program instruction aide. We also have a vacant teaching position there, and we don't want to fill that position until we get the teacher, because we won't need it without the teacher. So we think we may have a candidate for recommendation at the next board meeting for both of those positions, but we are pulling it off for tonight. On page 2, there for Mark Braun, I did add kind of a little qualified statements there. It said Mark Braun employing the position of head cross-country coach for Summersville Middle School effective upon completion of any applicable WVDE, WVSSAC requirements. I said since there were no other applicants for this position, Mark Braun will serve as head coach. Actually, there were other applicants, they just weren't qualified. Mark Braun is qualified, and they were not going to be able to begin practice this week, having not agreed to take that position on as well as the high school position. So I think once we have somebody qualified, I feel certain he will probably step away from the middle school position again. Also on page 2, there for the employing a position of 21st century after-school tutor for Summersville Elementary School, we added the name of Rachel Ford. On page 3, employing the position of interventionist for Summersville Elementary School, we added Diana Barnett. And also for employing the position of 21st century after-school tutor for Birch River Elementary School, Gornina Williams. On page 4, Randy Angus, employing the position of parent coordinator for Summersville Elementary School, effective upon the direction of the building administrator. Under consent, Brandy Brown resigns her position at Zila Elementary, as teacher at Zila Elementary School, effective August 12th, 2022. Caitlin Giles resigns her position as temporary support staff cheer at Nicholas County High School, effective August 1st, 2022. And also to rescind the transfer of Alex Melanese. On page 5, we added the following names for approval of, for chaperones for RHS Band Camp pending completion of the chaperone hazing training, and those names are Kara Shaver, Greg James, Cody Boone, George Dotson, Stacy Hutchinson, Zach Lyons, Heidi Mollahan, I see I have her name twice, and Spring Blankenship and Misty James. On page 6, you have a request for employee leave. We do not read those aloud. And then also on page 7, you have a list, an updated list of the vacancies. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
We just employed a 6th grade science teacher at Summersville Middle. Is there still another opening there, or?
We've had several 6th grade positions there. I don't recall hiring another. She just sent me this recommendation. You sure? Because we had science, we had math, we had English.
Yeah.
And then we have a 7th and 8th grade science
Under
vacant.
professional, we hired a 6th grade math teacher.
I think that was to replace the Smallwood, and then you had it as a higher pending on the list. So I think
Oh,
it
okay,
just
yeah.
cancels that out.
Yeah, so
There's nothing
whenever
else.
I give you are you looking at the vacancy list?
Yes.
If it says hire pending, that means that their name is on this agenda,
Okay.
because they're not technically approved yet. So that's what that means, that their name is before you, currently.
So there'd be 13 openings, right?
Well, but then if you look, we have some people who are just moving from one position to another.
Uh-huh.
And then we had a resignation. So when you add that resignation on there, and where some people just moved over, we're gonna stay at 14.
Okay.
We also had a resignation this includes the resignation that you approved at the last board meeting on last Thursday. For the pre-K teacher at Gully River, you approved that on Thursday.
Any other questions? Okay, the consent items, we're going to vote on those separately, please. So, do we have a motion to accept the personnel agenda except for the consent part of it?
Do you want all the consent removed or just the volunteers?
I've got relatives on both lists, so let's vote on those separately.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the personnel list, all except for the consent items.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Mr. Berry seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So I will need to step out if there's going to be any discussion on the volunteers or the chaperones.
Mr. President, I think you're okay.
Okay?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent items on the personnel list as presented this evening.
On the volunteer list.
Well, it's the consent, that whole
Everything
section.
consent.
Okay.
Volunteers.
Oh,
And
need a second.
Sheridan, I'm not going to vote on this one. So do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Green? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to superintendent's information.
Just an update, and I may have more information next board meeting, but we were required to submit for an extension by June 15th. We made the request on June 14th to FEMA for identifying the milestones for project completions, and received correspondence today of FEMA giving us, granting us a 90-day extension to give more details about the milestones and to discuss the labor and material shortages. So as we get more information, you know, I will do that, but I'll be working on creating milestones, working with the architects to make sure that we can give a more solid time frame for milestones.
That doesn't change the schedule that we had set up on it.
No, the schedule was still the same. I think all they're asking is they want more. They want like, and again, I really need to go through this. I just got this late this evening, so, or this afternoon. So I think what they're wanting is, and we'll ask for more clarification, they're not asking for it from us. They're asking for it from School Building Authority, because they're the applicant. So I will be working with the School Building Authority to see exactly what they're wanting. So once I talk to them, we'll know more and we'll get more information, which it's a good thing.
Any questions for Dr. Teacher? Thank you. Moving along to number 9, reports. Dr. Penix, SESC.
We did meet, I think I've reported to you since our last meeting, so there was nothing new. So.
Okay. Thank you. And Bright Horizons, Mr. Green.
We haven't had no meetings here recently, so.
No meeting, no new meetings. Do we have any delegations? Anybody sign up for delegations? Ms. Sherry? Okay, number 11, items for future agendas.
I'd like to hear from ZMM. Report from ZMM.
On where they're at. As far as where they're at on the plans for the new schools.
On the changing plans, on the report to the school board authority, and how much time's left, anything like that.
Well,
How progressive.
Kind of like where they are on the
Yeah,
schedule.
where they are.
We were told September they're supposed to have the bid package ready for Cherry River. So, I mean, everything I know is they are moving along. I mean, I just, probably need to hear from them. And if they have any updates on drawings or anything like that, it'd be nice to.
And it sounded like they were on schedule for that on our meeting today.
Well, I think we decided once before that we want to hear from them periodically, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so.
There's been a couple of meetings.
How often does Skanska have a meeting on the job site? Once a month, every 2 weeks?
They have a construction meeting, so there's a construction meeting, they have, just to explain it, so there was a committee assignments that the board appointed. So Mr. Prime was appointed to sit on the 1:30 meetings on Mondays, which is a construction update meeting. And then there's a meeting that is on site, and it's supposed to be absent of any board members at the meetings because contractors are on site. It is superintendent, office staff, contractors, FEMA. So those meetings occur every other week. And when we have those meetings, it's like owner concerns, talking with the contractors, and it's a real delicate situation because from how it was explained to me, the reason they have the 1:30 call on every Monday is so that board members can participate in knowing what the construction updates are weekly. And then the bi-weekly that's why it's a separate meeting from the bi-weekly meeting, is so that they can, if you're gonna have to sit in and make decisions on something that the contractor's involved in, you can't really be in those contractor meetings. So just explaining the difference between those meetings, and so that we do have those every other week, and of course, sometimes, we get into really lengthy discussions sometimes with the contractors, with Terradon, with ZMM, and, anyone else involved. I mean, we've had other parties up there with permits. We go over, if there's any findings from the DEA, silt fencing, and things like that. So that's just a regular meeting that I'm involved in, Chris Hanshaw, Alan Stump, and Kevin Hess. So we're the ones that represent the board at that. But like I said, it's basically the same thing that Mr. Prine is hearing, but he hears it absent of the contractors. So I don't know much about it. The only thing I know is they said that the contractors are supposed to be separate from the board members, if that makes sense.
Because in essence, we employ them to do
Yes.
a job.
Okay, anything else for future agendas?
Mr. President, I'd like to share this. I just did a little research. I love statistical stuff, and I had a ball with it when I was doing my doctoral work, and offered services to many people in the department, it was in the cohort I was in. If you would just pass those along. I did a little research about trying to determine, data about our high school graduates, particularly that go to college. And this is really difficult to track their success once they leave us. We can get the information when they leave us, they go to college, but what happens after that? How many actually graduate? And it's real difficult to get that information together. But what I looked at, if you'll start at the top up there, is the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission on their West Virginia college going rate for 2018. That's the latest data that I could get. I talked with Dr. Lee about that, and she seemed to think that the reason for that was that the COVID and pulling data together and that type of thing to get real accurate data because of how schools were affected by COVID. I also looked at the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission's report card for 2018. And you can see the West Virginia the state college going rate for 2018 was 52.6%. Nicholas County's for that same year was 47.3%. Then they break it down in that college going rate report even further. In 2018, Nicholas County High School had 171 graduates, Richwood High School had 99, for a total of 270 high school graduates from the public schools of Nicholas County. In 2018, the college going rate for Nicholas County High School was 49.1%, which equals 84 of those students went on to college. Then Richwood High School had 46.5%, which equaled 46 of their students going on to college. So a total of 130 kids went on to college that year from Nicholas County. Now, if you average the 49.1% and the 46.5, you get the 47.3, okay? Then the data on actually having success with graduating from college, the only data that was available was from 2014, and it looked at those who had earned a BA or a BS degree that had started college fresh out of high school and had completed within 4 years. And you can see the rate of that for all public colleges in West Virginia was 31.2%, which equal to, if we put that to the 2018 numbers, we have to look at these varying years because that's all the information we have, but I can tell you this, the percentages of the graduates from college, it wasn't real extreme up and down, it was just up and down slightly over the years, and it's not relatively the same all the time, but it might go up slightly, then it might come down just a little bit. But we take 31.2%, we would say that of the 84 students that went to college from Nicholas County High School, 26 of them graduated within 4 years. And then going over to the 6-year data, the total students that graduated within a 6-year period of time, it was 51.6%, or 43 students. Richwood High School with 31.2 graduating in 4 years, they had 14 students to graduate with degrees, and then the 6-year graduates, about 24, for a total of 67 kids or students that graduated within that 6-year period. And that would include the 4-year, because they've already graduated, but the 6-year graduates. The limitation, going on down, 2018 Nicholas County graduates, 270, minus the 67 that earned BA degrees, that leaves 203 students, or 75% of the students, who did not get college degrees. So what type of training did they receive for life, or preparation for life? That's, on the school system. What are we doing to get them ready for life, the 75% that didn't go? And Dr. Lee, what was it you said that agreed with what?
When we worked on the strategic plan, we had looked at the latest census data, and it was around 23-24% countywide of adults over 18 that have a bachelor's or higher.
So it complements what we're seeing here in this same data that I just looked at. But so 75% of our students are in need of definite training when they leave high school to do something in life. The limitations to this information, of course, is that the data only considered graduates of West Virginia public colleges and universities. Most of our kids, that's where they went, was to the public colleges and universities. There were a few that went to private colleges or out of state, but not very many, but that's a limitation there. So the conclusion is Nicholas County schools must focus on preparing all students for life, work, and advanced levels of training after graduation, not just the 25% graduating with college and going to college. The academy approach that we've been talking about allows all students to discover, explore, and complete career preparations. I think this is valuable information that we need to share with our people, and that we need to get all kids prepared when they walk out the door. If you have any questions, Kevin Hess will answer. Well, he laughed.
You have complete within 4 years. Are they not also included in the complete within 6 years?
Yes, that's what I was saying, is that the 6 years includes the ones that completed in 4 years.
Okay.
It's the ones that actually completed totally.
Okay, well, that's what they used to say to us when we were freshmen. They'd say, look to your left, look to your right, those two people aren't going to graduate.
Yeah.
So That's 67%.
I just wanted to share that with
In
you.
the middle, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad I was sitting in the middle.
Me too.
Okay, any other items for future agendas? Future meeting dates. Regular meeting, Monday, August 15th, 2022, at the Nicholas County Board of Education office. Start time is at 6:00 p.m. That leads us to adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
So, Mr. Green makes a motion to adjourn, seconded by Dr. Penix. All in favor? Aye. At 8 o'clock.